Hey ladies, are you looking for a podcast that brazenly advances women's political interests? Check out Female Political Strategy.
Female Political Strategy is a politics-focused spinoff brought to you by the ruthless minds behind the female dating strategy. I'm Lilith, a socialist.
Elle, a conservative.
And I'm Ro, and I'm politically non-binary.
Join us as we shatter male-crafted narratives on all sides of the political spectrum and spearhead our agenda for a female-focused future.
Tune in to Female Political Strategy wherever podcasts are distributed.
You can also find us on Twitter at Female Political. Until next time, Team Female. Hey Queens, are you ready to level up? Then join our Patreon at patreon.com/the female dating strategy, where you can find weekly bonus content and FDS commentary on all the latest pop culture, relationship, and dating news. If you just want to listen to the extra bonus content, we have the Lurker Mode tier on our Patreon. If you want merchandise, access to the private FDS Patreon Discord, which also includes a monthly book club with FDS and feminist-themed books, as well as FDS merchandise, t-shirts, mugs, and the opportunity to discuss topics with the FDS podcast queens live, as well as submit stories for our Rose to Queen and Gnosis discussions on the podcast itself. So if you'd like access to all this and more, visit our Patreon at patreon.com/the female dating strategy. What's up, Queens? Welcome to the Female Dating Strategy Podcast, the meanest female-only podcast on the internet. I'm Ro.
And I'm Savannah.
And I'm Lilith. Yeah, so today is going to be our great cohabitation showdown. So it sounds like me and Savannah, we've been on Twitter the past few weeks talking about cohabitation. And this is one area, I guess, where me and Savannah disagree in a very stark way. So I'd like to get Savannah to say her opinion first, because I think hers is more controversial, which I think is based, by the way. But so, Savannah, what's your stance on living with a man?
In an ideal world, I mean, this is like, if I was in a utopian world, I would never live with a man ever, even if we were married. We would have either
like completely separate houses.
So in an ideal world, yes. I mean, in the UK, it's hard to get one house, talk less of two, but at the barest minimum, we would have separate bedrooms and separate bathrooms. I personally think it's really important for, even if you're in a married couple, to have your own space. Like, my parents, they're both at home and they don't spend all day together in the same room. They actually have their own little, like, how do you call it? Their own little, parts of the house that they go into for the day. And I just would, and I very, very much like my own space. Like, I look at my bed, like, each time I think of living with a man, I just look at my bed, which is king size, and I just think, I'll have to give up 50% of this, and I just don't want to. Like,
you have the Whoopi Goldberg defense, which is, I don't want no man living in my house.
Yeah.
The very famous Whoopi Goldberg quote.
I just get really, really, like, tetchy when people are in my space. Now, I'm not saying, like, I wouldn't stay for, like, a weekend or even a week. Like when my ex used to come and visit me, I would, be in, like, his house for, like, a week, or he'd come to mine, and that was fine. But I just wouldn't do it permanently. Like, no. So, I always say to my friends, like, I want to get, like, a house that's big enough, because, like, one of my friends owns a house, and there's, like, a second property at the back of it, and I was like, that'll be perfect. I can have the main house, he can live in the little in the shed back.
You want to do things Oprah style? Because isn't it like Oprah and Stedman's arrangement? Like, she lives in the main mansion, he has some kind of house out back on her ranch.
Queen.
If I'm not mistaken.
First of all, it's based.
But, yeah, probably. And also from a practical standpoint as well, like, I've asked my, people who are married or who, like, live together, okay, so if you're in a one bedroom and you both have an argument, where are you sleeping? And they're just like, oh, we share a bed, or I sleep on the sofa. I was like, fuck that. Like, if you have your own house, you can just go back to your house and sleep peacefully without having to, you have to sleep with somebody you think is currently, like, a sly piece of shit, or having to sleep on the sofa.
Without seething resentment to the man sleeping next to you.
Exactly, yeah. So that's my, and it's just off the table with a boyfriend. I would never consider it with a boyfriend, ever.
Yeah.
Not in the
So is this going to be like a pros and cons episode? Are we doing a full-on debate?
Well, no, Savannah's going to say her part. I will say my part. And then, Rob, since you've never lived with a man.
I've never lived with a man, so I can talk about
why.
why.
That was crazy to me. By the way, when Rob told me I've never lived with a boyfriend, I was like, what? I was like, I've lived with almost every serious, like, I don't know, maybe it's just because of the city that I live in, it's so expensive, but like the entire point of dating in my city is to find someone that you can split rent with that you can also fuck. Like, that's the whole point of dating.
Yeah, I was going to say as well, like, you know, my position is a bit more nuanced and I would never do it. It also, you know, we'll come to this in the episode as well, but I do think there may be some exceptions and circumstances where it's in a woman's benefit to perhaps move in with a guy. But for me, generally, juice ain't worth the squeeze.
Okay, so even like price of, you know, cost of living notwithstanding, like even if I could afford having two houses, I'm just the sort of person, maybe I'm just like a stage 5 clinger like that, but when I'm in love and when I am in a relationship with someone that I actually like, I just want to spend all of my time with them. Like, maybe not all of my time, but I want to spend a lot of time with them. Like, I really like, and this is another opinion that maybe gets me in trouble on like separatist Twitter, I guess, is that, you know, I love like cuddling. I love falling asleep in each other.
But separatist Twitter, separate houses wouldn't even be enough, right? They want men to live on another planet. Basically,
yeah,
so
or not exist at all.
Even if you like live on different planets, I'll be like, nope, not enough. There need to be different solar systems.
Yeah, different galaxies. No. But for me, like, honestly, when I'm in love, again, I love like cuddling. I love falling asleep in each other's arms. I love waking up in each other's arms. I love cooking breakfast together. I love like just being together, like, not all the time, but a lot of the time. I just like it. Like, I don't know. I do also like my own company. So yeah, it is important to have your own room. You know, I like to have my own room where I do my hobbies or whatever, or just like go out with friends, like just by myself and not with my boyfriend and so on. Right. Or, you know, obviously when I'm at work, for example, I'm not with my boyfriend and so on. Right. But I don't know. I think the whole point of being in a relationship is like, is that when you're with that person, that they're high enough value that they add quality to your life, you know, like being like single should be great, but, you know, obviously your life should be happy when you're single as well. But like, I would never be in a relationship with someone that I hated or that detracted from my life. Right. So when I'm in a relationship and they add value to my life, that's why I want to spend a lot of time with them. Right. So that's that. But then again, like, that's just me. Like, if you know, if other women, you know, don't want to live with their male partner all the time, then that's fine. The other thing is, like, not all men are great to live with. Some men just do actually suck at cohabiting, especially if they expect you to do all the chores. Like in my relationship, I cook, he cleans, and so that's how we like split, you know, house chores and stuff like that. If I was ever in a relationship with a man where he wanted me to do all the cooking and the cleaning, I'd be like, no, fuck that, and it would be a huge turnoff and would make me seem as like sort of a child. You know, like children, it's like, yeah, I can't stand men like that, right? So, yeah, there are some men who are just so shitty that living with them is just not worth it. Yeah, but if he pulls his weight around the house, I think it is worth it to live with men. But that's just me.
Well, you know, as they say, a distance makes the heart grow fonder.
That's true, actually, yeah.
I guess I'm somewhere in between you two because I'm kind of like Lilith for like the first 3 months, and then I don't like sleeping next to anybody.
For the first 3 months?
Yeah, like 3 months I'm all over them, and then about 3 months is when I want to physically get as far away from them as possible when we're sleeping. Like, I don't even like my dog sleeping in my bed because I feel like my dog takes up too much room. Like, and he's not that big. So I know for sure if I were to ever move in with a guy, I've never done it so far, we would have to have at minimum a California king bed if we were going to sleep together, like a wide bed so that
See, I like when we're both in the same bed and it like creates this like cavern that like forces us to be closer together. I like that, but I'm a fucking weirdo. So again, not for everybody.
No, I don't think you're weird. I think it's just
I'm just cuddly like that.
I don't mind cuddling either, but I dated a guy too that always used to fall asleep with the TV on, and that just was so old to me too. That's why I'm like, oh, you can't sleep over here.
Okay, that's annoying.
It's like if you need the TV to be on when we're sleeping, like this is never gonna work.
Yeah, no, I have a strict no TV in the bedroom rule. The bedroom should be for sleeping and sex only, and no eating in the bed. That's the other thing.
Yeah, see, I think that's another thing for me is people's sleeping habits. They can be so different. So, for example, I sleep with a bedside light on, like I'll eat in my bed. I don't have a TV but someone else, they might be very, very different. And also, you know, another thing as well is just like the snoring. Some people snore so loud that I just can't sleep.
See, I'm the snorer. He's the one who has to put up with me snoring. So, I mean...
Yeah, my ex was a snorer, and I think he actually had sleep apnea, but...
Also, the size of the bed for me is not relevant. It could be a twin size, it could be a California king, and I'm still going to colonize 90% of that bed. It doesn't matter. Like, whatever amount of bed we have, I'm going to take 90% of that, and most of the time the guy just puts up with it, because again... The benefits of living with a woman are so high that he just puts up with my shit.
With being in a little bitty, tiny piece of the bed.
Yeah. Being practically falling over the edge.
Okay, so how do you guys handle situations where one of you wants to go to sleep and the other one doesn't, but you don't necessarily both want to be outside of the bedroom? Because that's also a thing that drives me nuts. Like, if I'm ready to go to bed and then my partner is just walking around behind me doing whatever... You just put absolutely everything outside of your room. Because I have my electronics in my bedroom. So you just like do like a no electronics in the bedroom. So one person can't be on the computer or their laptop while the other one's sleeping, or no TV in the bedroom.
See, I'm usually the one who goes to bed earlier. And so in that case, when I want to go to bed, we're going to bed. Like, it doesn't matter what he wants. We're going to bed when I'm going to bed. And if he wants to go to bed later, he can exist outside the bedroom and has to sneak in really, really quietly so as to not wake me up. That's the rule.
So you don't have any, but I'm saying you don't have any electronics or anything in your bed. So like he's not reading in the bedroom. Because like, you know what I mean? Like if you're asleep and then the other person wants to read or watch TV or mess around on the computer or be on their phone.
Yeah, he does that in the living room. If he wants to be on his phone or whatever, he can go to the bathroom and sit on the toilet on his phone.
So basically you make your bedroom a place where you can't do anything but sleep. Whereas
yes.
like I'm a person that likes to do a lot of things in my bedroom, so
yeah. Same.
See, maybe I'm just a bedroom tyrant like that. I'm like, we're gonna do what I want.
Yeah.
It's gonna be on my terms.
My ex has had like a whole sound system like set up in his bedroom. So it was like I would go to sleep in his bed and then he'd be up like playing music, but he would have his headphones on so I couldn't really hear it, right? So he'd be playing.
Okay, that's not so bad. As long as you can't hear it, that's what's important.
But yeah, but it's still some of those things I'm just conscious as another person moving around in the room. Maybe I've just only dated people who've also had stuff going on in their bedroom as well as I do.
Yeah.
They're not just sleeping in their bedroom.
Yeah, you want to be in your bed, right? It's more comfortable.
So maybe that's what it is. Like, it's just not practical to have electronics in the bedroom or two sets of electronics with two different people. Like, you'd almost have to put a boundary in place and be like, the bedroom is only for sleeping.
Yes, that's exactly it. I have rules around the bedroom. And if he wants to live with me, because again, living with me is a privilege, he will obey those rules. Again, I'm a bedroom tyrant.
I have to do that too, though. That would make me change my habits. That's why I'm like reluctant. Like that means I have to put all my shit out of my bedroom. So maybe it's like a living together etiquette thing. Like how do you cohabitate with high etiquette with another person in a way that's comfortable and realistic for both of you? And then two, are there like pros and cons to actually cohabiting? Obviously the big pros are saving on money.
Yeah.
But then there's some cons as far as like women feeling like they fall into the wifey role without the actual wifey title.
Yeah, that's the other thing. There's actually a post on the subreddit that maybe we'll pull it up and talk about it, that I saw early in my FDS days, and that was like a total game changer for me, because it was like, never live with a boyfriend until you're married. And me, having lived with almost every single serious relationship I've ever had, was like, how dare you personally attack me like this?
Yeah, that's part of my aversion to living together too. I can't see myself seriously living with a guy unless we were engaged. And a big part of that is because I would have to change. Because I would have to start to worry about him all of the time if we were living together.
Yeah.
In a way that you don't when you're living apart. Right? Because then you're truly making decisions for two once you're living in the same space.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's too easy for, especially if you move in to save money, which I think if you live in a major city like, London, where the rents are absolutely, it's just essentially criminal, like how expensive it is. But it's just too easy to get into a situation where where your living situation is basically tied to your relationship.
Yeah, that's definitely risky, actually. And that's actually another reason why a lot of women find themselves in abusive relationships, is because if you live in a city where it's really expensive and you can't afford to live on your own, a lot of women will feel like they have to put up with bad treatment or bad behavior from men, and that they can't leave, otherwise, they'll be homeless. So
yeah, I think it's important to have lived on your own before you live in a relationship with a boyfriend, so that you can handle it and leave. Because there's maybe this inertia that sets in when you've never lived by yourself. Like, it might seem more of a hurdle, and it might seem a little bit scary if you've never done it before. And and part of my aversion to living with anybody is just because I had roommates at one point, and I've had both male and female roommates. And I was like, oh no, I can't be doing this. Like, after a while, when I was younger and broker. And then once I could afford to live on my own, I've lived on my own ever since. There's so much roommate drama I've had over the years. And even the ones that were nice, there was just times where I was like, I'm just kind of tired of looking at you. And it wasn't like anything personal. It's just like
a roommate. Do you share a room? Is that what it means? Or do you share rooms in a house?
You share rooms in a house or an apartment. So we weren't living in the same room.
Oh, okay. Flatmate. Okay.
it's like flatmate, I guess, is what you'd say.
Yeah.
Yeah. So roommates are a little different for me, because with roommates, it's like it's more sort of like consensus based. You're all equals. You have to like, it's a fair and equal partnership and all that. Again, I'm in the home. I'm a tyrant. I'm like, no. This is my house. Even if it's his house and I'm moving in with him, as soon as I live with him, it's my house. Because women engage in like nesting behavior kind of thing, or at least like this is what I tell men so that they have to put up with my shit, is that like when women move into a place, they have to like make it their own home. It's like, feminine nesting behavior or whatever. Then he just like does whatever I tell him to do. And then, like if I want the walls painted a certain color, we're painting the walls a certain color. If I want things to be a certain way, if I want him to throw out his big old ugly armchair, we're throwing out the big old ugly armchair. I don't know. It's like,
interestingly enough, I've done that to men's places that I haven't actually lived in. I've just been like, I don't like your decoration.
We're redecorating because I said so.
Yeah, I just didn't like it. And then so we went, like, I remember multiple times specifically going to like the home store with boyfriends and being like, yeah, we're going to make your place look nicer.
And telling him to buy stuff.
Because I'm like, if I'm going to spend significant time over here, I need to be wallowing in comfort.
No, that's exactly it. I'm like, yeah, if you want me to spend more time. And the thing is like, I know a lot of people probably listening to me thinking I'm like a horrible person, but honestly, the men that I date, they like spending time with me too. Okay. Like they're mostly fine with going along with whatever color I want, or changing the trim on the fucking door frames, or whatever like minor detailing I want to do to his house. They're usually fine with that, because again, like they're like, well, okay, like as long as she's going to be coming over every day and like cooking for me and like we're going to be fucking every day, like for him, it's worth it too. Okay. So
yeah. Maybe we should do like a pros versus cons debate. So the first pro is obviously you save on rent.
Yeah,
that can be like quite substantial, especially like we've said, if you live in a big city, or if you can't yet afford to get your own place, because I don't know how it is over where you guys are, but at least here, even if you want to rent a place, like, because I remember when I was looking for somewhere to rent, and I was like losing to couples, even if you're renting, estate agents prefer if you apply as part of a couple, than if you apply as a single person, because they just see it as, well, you've got dual incomes as opposed to one.
That's interesting. I don't know if that's true here or not.
Yeah, I know I lost out to a couple of couples because I was applying on my own. They would always ask, oh, you're applying with somebody else? And I'd always say no, because the landlord, basically, they get to pick. And it's probably the same if you want to buy as well, because, two incomes are better than one.
Yeah, if you want to buy a place, yeah.
Yeah, if you want to buy a house, it's easier to get a mortgage if there's two incomes rather than one.
Yeah. So, but then the big drawback to that is
dependency,
but also on the mortgage is like, if you split up, then you have shared debt. which shared debt is really, really, really hard to get out of. So yeah, I would definitely never, ever, ever buy a house with a guy unless you are married.
Yeah.
Like when I worked in finance, I'd see this all the time. Happened to one of my managers. She, like her, like forever boyfriend, she was a forever girlfriend. They were together for like 8 years. He convinced her to buy a property. They did. And then 3 months later, he left her for another woman. So I think she had to be bought out, but she ended up losing about 20 grand. Like she never got the money back because they were in negative equity.
I have another horror story, actually. A friend of mine, they were actually married, but they bought a home. She bought a homestead. She basically married this guy because he wanted a homestead and she wanted to do homesteading, and they had nothing else in common. Like there was no other compatibility other than both wanting to be little house on the prairie kind of thing. So they bought a homestead together. Like they spent a couple of years like building it up, making it exactly how they wanted it and so on, and like buying animals together, and like this, it was like this whole thing. And then the relationship just got slowly more and more toxic. Eventually they had to get a divorce, and they had to sell the homestead for less than what they bought it for, by the way, actually, because the housing market was like really hot when they bought it, and it has since like cooled down a bit. So they actually lost money, and like not only is it like did they lose money on it, but now they're sort of like they spent all that time building up their sort of dream house, and like they weren't able. She tried to buy him out, and it wasn't possible and stuff. And so she lost her sort of like dream house after spending all that time, right? So that's the other risk to. That's the other thing is like make sure before you buy a house with a man, even if you're married, make sure you've done your due diligence and have like vetted him and like have done as much work as possible to be able to foresee future problems and prevent divorce from happening, Like, don't just marry a guy just so that you can have someone to buy a house with.
There's a pretty funny episode of Tiny House. This is like, do you guys ever seen the Tiny House, like,
no,
YouTube
I haven't seen it.
stories?
No.
But it was basically kind of like that, where it was like a man and woman met on a dating app, and then she really, really wanted some guy to build her a tiny house, and so he builds her this tiny house, and then you could tell that like he doesn't want to live with her anymore, but like she's all in on this tiny house. But it was like they didn't know each other for very long before they moved in together, and like they're showing off their tiny house that he built, but like she's all in on it, but he's kind of like basically sarcastic the entire time about the fact that he just met this girl off of a dating app and then built her a whole home, and she's still complaining and stuff. And then it's actually pretty funny. But
I'm gonna need you to share the link with me because I want to see this right after.
Yeah, see if I can find it. So another pro to living together is, in theory, shared domestic labor.
In theory.
Even though that's not the case often in practice.
Apparently, married mothers actually do more domestic labor than single moms, like in terms of hours per week, because when you have a whole extra person to clean up after who's not pulling their weight, I'd say that's a pretty massive con, actually, in most cases. But there are some rare circumstances where if the man is pulling his weight, especially if like someone like me, like I like cooking, but I don't like cleaning. So if there's someone I can delegate that undesirable task to, I will take that option.
I'll be honest, I've been the messier person in all of my relationships, but that's because I have a million hair products and makeup products and everything else. Like I'm a woman, right? So I have more. Every single guy I've dated has like had very simple clothing. They're stylish, meaning like they focus on their clothes, but everything's like very neatly organized, and they have just shirts, pants, sweaters, right? Whereas women, we have dresses, short dresses, long dresses, formal dresses, casual dresses, etc., right? And then when it's in the bathroom, they have like a small collection of grooming products they use, like their hair stuff, their shave stuff.
The 3-in-1 shampoo.
Yeah, and then I have like curly hair shampoo, straight hair shampoo, glosser, blow butter, like blow dry butter.
Oh,
like,
blow dry butter. Okay, body butter. Yeah,
body butter, blow dry butter, everything. So just like a million and one beauty products, and so even when I go over their house, I have like my away bag, and it's just full of beauty products and stuff, and then I have to like consciously keep myself from spreading it out all over their sink.
Yeah, same. Same.
Like I have my makeup, then I'll have my like my hair type specific stuff. So I'm like, if I want to wear it straight, you got to bring your heat protectant and your hair serum and your blow dry butter and your blow dryer and your round brush and your paddle brush and your flat iron. Like
it honestly feels like you're like a portable like hair shop when you travel, go somewhere.
Yes. Yeah, so that's kind of the thing with guys I've dated where I have to say that I've been the messier one, not because I'm like filthy or anything, but like because I've just had so many more things than them. And it's at times been annoying to them.
Yeah, well, again, from my perspective, he just has to put up with the things about me that are annoying.
Yeah, I agree. I mean,
so I don't care about that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Okay, so shared domestic labor and cleaning, but what about things like cooking and laundry, etc.? Because I've never lived with a guy such that I've had to do his laundry. I've stayed over and cooked with guys, but
I only ever do my laundry and he does his laundry. We keep our laundry separate because we do our laundry differently. So that I've never done laundry for a man. I just do my own laundry. Cooking, I like the act of cooking, and it's not like a wifey material kind of thing. No, it's like I actually like the physical process of making food. It's meditative to me. It's relaxing. Every meal I make for myself, if I'm single, is a gourmet meal. And when I'm in a relationship, I still make gourmet meals for myself. And it's like, okay, he can just have some of my food kind of thing, right?
That's been hit or miss with me too, because I've dated guys that are really into fitness, so they have a very limited amount of things that they eat.
Okay, well, those guys are annoying, so.
And then I've also dated guys who are chubby. And yeah, I mean, it's a pro and a con. Like my experience with the guys that cook all the time and like where they like to eat a diverse amount of things like I do, if I'm over their house, they tend to clean. If they're over my place, I tend to clean. And we just split it that way. And that's just how I've always worked it out in my relationships. But the guys that were like, that basically ate bird food, I ended up cleaning because they didn't eat. They'll have like a veggie shake in a sandwich.
Okay, no, those guys, I categorically reject those kinds of men. I mean, I've dated those fitness bros, and I can't be around them because it makes me feel, I get like an eating disorder by proxy. So no, if he's one of those guys that only eats like lean chicken breast and like broccoli for every meal, and like brown rice, chicken breast and broccoli.
Or they eat out all the time. Like they basically eat, I'm trying to think what they eat. They have coffee, green smoothies, and then like a salad or something they would get from like a Whole Foods bar or something like that. So they just weren't guys that cooked regularly, and they just ate like birds.
No, I don't. I only date guys that are not picky eaters. Like any kind. That's the other thing. Is like I eat a wide variety of food. So any man who has any kind of dietary restriction, immediate next. Like that's another standard of mine. Man has to be a flexible eater. If he is like, oh, I don't eat vegetables, like next. Oh, if he's vegan, next. If he's one of those weird carnivore diet guys, next. If he's one of those like high protein, never eat a carb or a gram of fat people, guys, next. I only date guys who eat a wide variety of foods because I also eat a wide variety of foods. And so, yeah, most of the time the guy is just like happy to eat whatever I make, and what I would make for myself anyways. And yeah.
So how did you guys split like cleaning your place or cleaning like laundry and stuff? Because that's the other thing too. Because like I didn't do any of that shit for any of the guys I dated. I'm like, you clean your shit at your house, I clean my shit at my house.
So one thing with men that I highly recommend women do is not move in with a guy who has not lived with himself before.
Yes,
because
agreed.
Because that's like a really important thing. A lot of men, if they've only ever lived with their mom or a girlfriend, they often have like no idea how much work it is to maintain a household. So that's another one of my standards when I'm dating is like I'll only ever date or move in with a guy who's previously lived by himself before. Most of those, and not just has he lived by himself, but he's had to have done a pretty good job of it too. Like if I go to his house and it looks like a shithole, also next. Okay.
Yeah, that's definitely a vetting strategy I highly recommend. I would never be around a guy who I feel uncomfortable at his place.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Like straight up.
He has to do a reasonably good job. It doesn't have to be like perfect, but like it can't be a slum. Okay.
Yeah.
So
you don't want to be with a dirty pig.
Let us remind everyone, no dirty pigs.
Throwback to the episode with Savannah's mom. And we'd just like to take a moment to thank the sponsor of this episode, Davy Piper.
If you're looking for comfortable loungewear and to celebrate women's achievements, then Davy Piper is the one for you.
Davy Piper's story is the story of women. Each of their products is made with premium fabric and has been thoughtfully curated in honor of courageous women who inspire us to be better.
Just like their Diana Classic sports bra, which was inspired by Diana, Princess of Wales, who used her platform to help those in need, including those struggling with mental illness and cancer.
Or the Nelly Simply Wireless Bra, inspired by a mother of 8, 6 by birth, and 2 from adoption. Davy Piper has inclusive sizing to accommodate women of all shapes and sizes,
including sizing for women above an E cup. So if you'd like to wrap yourself in supportive, wire-free, super soft, premium fabric bras made from organic cotton, head on over to davypiper.com and enter our promo code FDS to save 20% on your purchase. Save 20% on your purchase when you use the discount code FDS on davypiper.com. Thanks, and back to the show. So I guess the vetting strategy would be there. Make sure if you're going to move in with a guy, he's already lived by himself. But also, you should always live by yourself at least once if you can swing it.
Yeah,
I agree.
Having the ability to know you can live on your own, and then if anything goes on in your relationship, you'll have that confidence built in. Whereas sometimes I feel like the leap from living with roommates to living alone can be kind of daunting for people and make them stay in relationships.
And it's also about you being able and having the confidence to set boundaries, because when you are living together with somebody else, especially if your living styles may not mesh, you're going to need to communicate and to set and uphold new boundaries as well. And it can be sometimes difficult to do that if you've always lived in other people's spaces or you haven't really just had that experience as well.
And now that I'm thinking about it too, because I have a lot of siblings, there's also a certain level of awareness that I have about other people that some of my boyfriends who've had 1 or 2 or maybe 0 siblings don't know.
Like what?
I mean, I found that every guy I've dated that they either had a sibling that was much older than them, and they weren't they didn't grow up together and were used to having certain levels of hang time between when things were perfect or not, versus guys who had siblings. There's a difference. So one guy, for example, when I would get out of the shower, sometimes I would drip water and he just would freak about it. And I'm like, yes, that's why we put down towels, that's just kind of a normal thing. But I'm like, I have hair and you don't, right? But he was an only child. So,
oh, yeah, no, that's another red flag is any man that freaks out over anything that I do, especially minor things. That's another red flag. That's another quality that I look for in a man being patient or just not freaking out over minor things, Well,
he's not used to there being any mess at any given time other than his. So that's kind of the thing with if you have siblings or if you've had a lot of roommates, then you kind of get used to the fact that sometimes things aren't perfect, not gross and not a person not pulling their weight. But I feel like it's perfectly reasonable if you're just getting out of the shower bathroom's going to be wet, right?
Yeah. No, my boyfriend has 2 sisters. So, I mean, he knows what it's like. Okay. He knows what it's like to live with women. He's chill about it. So, I mean, and that's another thing I look for in men is if they've only ever lived with, either no siblings or only ever lived with brothers, a lot of them can be weird about stuff like periods or whatever, right? And can be kind of immature like that. So yeah, it's important for a guy to have had siblings, ideally also sisters. But yeah, that's another thing to look out for.
What's another pro of living together before we get to the cons? So
I like having sex every day. When I like my boyfriend and when I am physically attracted to him, yeah, I just like fucking every day. That's just how it be. So
fair
work. Yeah.
if he's good at sex, that is. Yeah.
Yeah, I hear you. I'm trying to think how we mostly worked it out. Yeah, I guess it is kind of a barrier, especially how, depending on how far I lived from the guy, it could be a couple of days before we had sex. But then sometimes the anticipation to me was good. So you just meet up and you just fuck all weekend and then you go about your business. I don't know. I guess it felt like I would miss them more because they weren't there every day, but then I've never lived with a guy, so.
You have no basis of comparison. Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
Do you ever get fatigue? Because once again, it's about 3 months before I'm wanting the guy to not be sleeping in my bed. on a consistent basis, even though it's not even every night because we don't live together. But even if it's like every other night, I'm like always mentally bracing myself for the fact that I have to sleep with another person. So like, even if we were having sex every day, I'm wondering if I would still have the same, like just touch fatigue, you know, with that person, where I would feel like, okay, I need you to be on I like having sex with you, but after we have sex, I need you to be like on the opposite side in the corner in a little ball. So I don't know you're here. After we have sex.
Oh, see, that's a problem that the second property would solve, because you can still have sex every day, but then he just retreats to his side of the house and I retreat to mine. That's it.
Yeah, I just get touch fatigue. I don't know how to explain that.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah.
I very much like Savannah's ideal situation of like having two houses on the same property kind of thing. Here's the thing, even though I like living with my partner, at absolute minimum, I would want to have 2 bedrooms. I could not live in like a 1-bedroom apartment or a small space like that or studio apartment.
Agreed.
God,
yeah.
no. Like I'd need to have like a second bedroom and have that be either like a guest bedroom or like a hobby room or TV room or I don't know, literally any room that also has a bed, just in case, like, I don't know, maybe I need to get up early in the morning, or, you know, if I'm just like feeling particularly tired and I just don't, you know. Oh, and the other thing is like, I don't like living with men if they're a very like annoying sleeper, like, because I am a pretty light sleeper, so I need a man to sleep like a corpse. If he sleeps like, if he's really like moving a lot or talks in his sleep or does any sleepwalking, that's another next for me. Even if he, that's, I know that sounds mean, like, oh, but he can't control that kind of thing. It's like, I don't care. I need him to sleep like a dead body, literally, because, you know, if he doesn't do that, then I'm sleeping in a separate bed just because I need to get my beauty sleep.
Yeah.
Sorry if that's a lot to take in.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not disagreeing. I mean, I'm trying to think of like realistically how I would prefer to have a sleeping arrangement. And I think I would want the option somewhere in the house where I could sleep by myself.
Yeah.
So I think I agree. We would have to have like 2 bedrooms.
I think we're all in agreement on that. Yeah.
And not even if you're mad at your partner, but sometimes just touch fatigue, or if one of you's sick. Because the other thing too is like, it's gross if one of you's sick.
Yeah, that's true.
And you just need them to be in another place. So
I'm pretty sure as well, like in the Victorian times, it wasn't the norm for like rich or like upper middle class / rich couples to like to share a bedroom.
Like if you're middle to upper class, it's actually quite normal to have separate bedrooms.
I was going to say that because I'm like, yeah, there's a lot of places in the world where people only have one room and they do literally everything in that one room, but they're less developed countries.
Even in like more developed countries, if you're poor, like my great-grandparents when they were out colonizing and shit, they lived in like a single like log house, right? Like it was like one room where they slept. You know, the kitchen was there, everything. Yeah, it was one room there. They did everything, and if they wanted to go to the bathroom, there was an outhouse kind of thing. But yeah.
Okay, so do we have any more pros before I move on to the cons?
No, I think that's all the pros that I can think of.
So I think the big con, and this has been backed up with a lot of research, is that if you move in with a guy, it gets much, much harder to convince him to propose, right? And to make some momentum towards marriage, because once again, he's getting all the milk for free, so he doesn't have to buy the cow. So the old school advice about not moving with a man unless you're planning on being married, I think holds firm. Or like, and that's how I feel about it too, because I'm like, I'm not making decisions for 2 people unless these 2 people have committed to be with each other for the rest of our lives, or in some massive amount of concrete commitment. Because I feel like the minute you move in together, you start to go into that mode where you're now thinking for 2. Whereas if you live apart, I'm making my decisions based on what's best for my life. You're making your decisions based on what's best for your life.
And you converge on certain issues, yeah.
Yeah, and it's fine because you don't give a shit because you don't live together. But once you start to live together, you start having to make joint decisions. And to me, that's like where, okay, you better be trying to put a ring on it, because I'm not going to just keep making decisions that benefit you or compromise with you without any type of return on that.
And there was actually, just off the back of that, there was a really interesting study that was shared quite some time ago on the subreddit, and I'll link it in the show notes as well. But they basically found that like within the sample size of the men, they found that 52% of cohabiting men between the ages of 18 and 26 are not like certain that their relationship is permanent. And a large majority, so 41%, they reported that they're not completely committed to their living girlfriends. So actually, a guy wanting to move in with you by itself is also, it isn't a sign of commitment or that he's committed to you, even though that's how it's often presented. Oh, he's serious about you, let's move in together. That's not always the case as well.
Yeah, it's mommy McBangmaid and convenient pussy subscription.
Yeah, what you're saying is reflected in this Reddit post. It was one of the posts on FDS that I saw early in my days, and I felt really personally attacked by it. But yeah, saying that men who live with their girlfriends see them as a convenience,
exactly,
and not as like a real equal partner.
Right. And from some of my friends who've lived with guys, you'd be surprised at how much guys will live with you and still make decisions for themselves.
Yeah.
That's why you need to have some kind of firm commitment before you move in with a guy, because he's still moving as if he's making a decision for what's best for himself, even though you live together and you're still not technically a joint as a couple, even though I think most women would see it that way.
Yeah. And I think a way to potentially vet for that is, if he does bring up moving in together, is to find out why. If it's all about saving money, then he's still making decisions in his best interests, if that makes sense as well. Mm-hmm. So, but if he, says, or, like my, if he says, for example, I want to be closer to you or something like that, then that's perhaps deeper consideration. But if the first default is he just wants to save money, I don't think that's a good enough reason to move in with a guy, because he should be financially stable anyway. And he should be able to live on his own, ideally.
True.
Yeah, he should be able to live on his own, ideally. So that's one big con. So the other reality and the other big con to me is that, okay, if you break up, you have to move out all your stuff. Every time I broke up with a guy, I have all the shit I've had at his house been like in a box or a bag, and then I just leave, right? Versus like me having to make a big dramatic exit with like a moving truck, etc. And if he's a piece of shit, that becomes even more tricky, because you got to try to move out when he's not there if you're scared of him or anything like that.
Or just bring a bunch of your friends, like what I did with my last relationship, is bring a few friends just be in the parking lot.
Come outside, we're not going to hurt you. No, I'm kidding.
Just in case he decides to throw hands, you've got more people on your team. Yeah.
Start leaping a little bit. Start becoming a boxing kangaroo. Check our Patreon content. I just feel like it's so much more dramatic if you break up and you live together, right?
Yeah, it is a huge pain in the ass. That is true.
Here's the other thing, too. There's a couple of men I didn't get in relationships with because they were still living with an ex when we met.
What? Wait, what?
Yeah, where they were like, listen, like, we can't break our lease till this time, so I'm going to be living with her for like 4 months.
I wouldn't even date a man like that. Fuck that.
Well, I didn't know till like they told me later about their living situation. So that's where I was like,
okay, yeah, I'd dump his ass. No.
Yeah, that's where I was like, I didn't end up dating them because of that. Where I was like, yeah, your life's met like, my motto right now. It's like, yeah, it sounds like you got a lot going on.
It sounds like you're going through a lot right now.
That's my out for everything in this work, because I just don't want to deal with it.
Smart.
So, but yeah, that's another thing too, is that, okay, let's say you do break up and both your names are on the lease, and then it could go on your credit report if you try to break your lease, and there's all sorts of financial downsides if you need to leave. Or you could do it the other way, where only one of you is on the lease, and then there's always the risk that he like wants to kick you out or does something like that, like something foul like that. Or doesn't pay rent, and then you're the only person on the hook if you're on the lease and he's not.
Yeah, exactly.
See, the way I've dealt with that in the past is I'll get it so that we have a co-signer that's one of his relatives, but not one of my relatives. So that way, like, and it's like a relative that like he wouldn't want to piss off. And so if something goes wrong or whatever, he can't just like bounce and like, leave me with the rent, or, like basically, my name's on the lease, but I'm not, it's kind of this like thing where it's like, if you're going down, like we're both coming down and I'm going to bring down one of your relatives kind of thing. So it'll like end up more heavily, like the consequences will weigh much more heavily on him. And also don't put yourself in a situation where your name's not on the lease, because that also puts you in a bad situation.
So I'll say the reason why I've never lived with a guy is because I once rented an apartment from one of my boyfriend's friend's fathers, and that situation turned out to be a nightmare because of the fact that like that the man who owned the building was like emotionally unstable. It was a really, really bad situation. And so it always left a bad taste in my mouth where I'm like, I don't like this situation where it feels like, okay, I'm caught between like, this is my boyfriend's friend. I'm trying not to like be disrespectful of this entire situation, but at the same time, like some things going around here are toxic. And then I felt like really like bullied, and I wasn't getting all the support I wanted from my boyfriend, but like this is like his good friend and like their close families, etc. So then I felt like the odd person out. And so then I left. So every situation for me, when I look at the idea of moving in with a guy, I don't like that power imbalance. Like I'm just straight up like, no, I'm never being in a situation where a guy has the power to make me feel unwanted or like kick me out in my own home. And then to obviously the things I said before about like just not wanting to commit to making decisions for two people if we're not on and get married, like putting it down legally. So
yeah. And again, that's another point that was brought up. I'm not going to read the whole Reddit post. We'll just like, I guess, leave this Reddit post in the show notes. But yeah, one of the points was that when you move in with someone like that, you do lose power. Like you do lose, like, I guess, negotiating power, especially, yeah, if the scenario that you described, that puts definitely more power in his situation.
Well, in that situation too, the reason why I rented from him because he gave it to me to a steep discount. But like that's the thing. It's like sometimes
it's too good to be true. It probably is. Yeah,
that's sometimes what happens. I was like, oh, like the reason why it's cheap to live here is because he's a nut job, and you got to deal with certain aspects of his like toxic personality. Yeah, so that's the thing about it. To me, like I have such a bad taste in my mouth from either roommates that were bad or a situation where I wasn't even living with my boyfriend. I was living in an adjacent way to someone related to my boyfriend. And that was fucking toxic. And I was like, there's just no way I could ever be in a situation again where I didn't have like complete control over my domain. So the other big con to me is like, let's say the relationship's over. How do you start dating again?
What do you mean? Like if you're living together, just move out.
But if moving out isn't an option as well, especially like we've said, because if the rental market is crap or you haven't saved for a deposit, because, you know, whilst I think it's always, even if you are living with somebody, you sort of have to almost act like you're living alone in the sense that, you know, have an emergency fund and all that jazz. But it can be a while before you get somewhere suitable, potentially, for some people.
Yeah.
I have a bunch of people in my phone that I could just crash on their couch for a few weeks if I needed to. So I'm good. I've always got a plan B. That's the other thing, is always make sure you have a plan B, somewhere you can go, relatives, friends, wherever. If you, God forbid, if anything were to happen, even if you just had an argument somewhere, you know, oh, I'm staying with my sister. I'm going to stay with my sister tonight. Something like that, you know?
Yeah, here's the thing though as well, but I mean, some people literally move states to move in with their partner.
Yeah, that's insane. I'd never do that.
That's actually my problem too. Is like, I don't live where my family lives. So like I have some friends I could probably crash with, but also they have boyfriends and girlfriends. So it's like,
exactly.
That would also be weird. So I don't live in proximity to my family. So it's not easy for me to just like pack up and leave and stay with one of them.
Yeah, same.
Yeah. And then once again, like if you're moving with a guy, like you're basically saying, I'm in this to win this too. And like, you're not, I don't know how to say it like this, but like you're almost cutting yourself off from the opportunity to even date anybody else if you're not sure about the relationship. So I'm just so against like moving in with a guy you're not 100% sure you're going to be committed to. Because then I feel like, okay, just think about the amount of time it would take you to like, okay, we're in a breakup, then you have to leave, and then you have to like set up your place and your new apartment, etc. And like you're just off the market all that time.
Yeah.
I don't know. It seems logistically complicated to me.
Yeah, it is. There is definitely an opportunity cost living with a man, especially if he's not marriage minded. So that's another thing to keep in mind. If I were to move, I live by myself currently. Even though I've been in a relationship for like 2 months, we have like talked about like, oh, should we move in together? And I've been like holding off on that because I don't think I would live with a man again until we're at least engaged. And then if he wastes my time and makes me be engaged to him for like 2 years or more, then I'd and the engagement, because I don't want to be in a situation where I don't ever want to be in a situation where I'm living with a partner for like years and years and he's not proposing to me and just sees me as like a forever girlfriend. I've never lived with a man for more than a year at any given time, though. So there is that.
There's some mixed research about whether or not cohabitation increases your chance of divorce and decreases your chance of marriage. Most of the studies up until like 2018, 2019 said that cohabitating before marriage both increased your likelihood of divorce as well as decreased your likelihood of getting married in the first place. Or I guess the second one being pretty obvious in that men feel like, oh, why should I buy the cow and get the milk for free? And the first one being that sometimes prematurely moving in with people creates a false sense of intimacy because you're moving in to like, share bills, etc. And then you don't actually realize how incompatible you really are. Mm. Like it almost creates like inertia rather than like you're actually moving in together because you love each other, you're ready to get married, and you feel like you're long-term compatible. So there's a study here I have from like Institute for Family Studies. So it says, you might think the question about the link between premarital cohabitation and divorce would have been settled long ago, but researchers have been puzzled about it for decades, and the puzzling lives on. Part of why the issue draws so much interest is that the vast majority of people believe that living together before marriage should improve the odds of doing well, even though the research has not supported that belief. This is an update on this long-running saga of research on the cohabitation effect. So in 2018, there was a study that contradicted the growing consensus that premarital cohabitation was no longer associated with greater odds of divorce, although it had been associated with poor marital outcomes for decades. So, and they think some of this is because it's become so common that the risk has been diffused a little bit because the people that used to cohabitate were like quote unquote high risk people, but now it's become a little bit more common. But
what do you mean? Wait, what are high risk people?
Meaning people who were more likely to like not believe in marriage or something like that, right? Or like people who weren't likely to get married in the first place.
Marriage is just a piece of paper. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's do another episode called Marriage is not just a piece of paper.
It's not. So it seems like now they're saying that cohabitation before marriage was associated with a lower risk of divorce in the first year of marriage, but a higher risk thereafter. So they noted that living together before marriage should give couples a leg up on the very start of their marriage because there's less of an adjustment to being married and specifically living together. But they found this advantage to be short-lived. Other factors related to experience may take over from there, such as how cohabitation can increase the acceptance of divorce. So, and it's pretty muddy, and maybe we'll go through this article a little bit more detail and parse out what it is. But like there's conflicting studies on like what exactly cohabitation does, and then what are the outside factors in the particular individuals or in the couple that makes them more likely to get divorced if they're cohabitating or less likely to get married. So the second one is pretty much everyone agrees that if you just stay with a guy with no commitment, he's going to keep that ride going for as long as possible.
He's going to keep that gravy train for as long as he can. Yeah,
exactly. The first one is a little bit less clear about like why do couples that cohabitate get divorced more often than the ones that don't? And it could just be that maybe the religious ones, because they don't believe in cohabitating, are more likely to stay married, but it's not conclusive. So,
I wanted to talk about what are the strategies for women if you currently live with your boyfriend and you're in a forever girlfriend situation?
I mean, I think move out. To be honest, like
straight up.
I think you give him an ultimatum, say like, I'd like to be married by X date.
Yeah.
And if that doesn't happen, you bounce.
I mean, it's tough because a lot of women will be like, there's the sunken cost fallacy. So they think like, oh, we have so much time together. We've been together for so long, it's so hard to move out at this point, right?
That's a strike for cohabitating them, because you don't want to get in a situation where you're like, I have to keep investing in this relationship because we've built this whole home together, etc.
Exactly.
Like you don't want to over-invest with no commitment. So big strike against cohabitating is that point exactly to me.
Exactly. Yeah. So I would strongly advise women, if you're in a situation where, you've been cohabitating with a guy for long and you want to be married and he hasn't taken that initiative to propose to you, I would say, you don't have any other option realistically other than continue to put up with not being married and not getting what you want, which obviously not good for women.
Yeah. You have zero leverage then.
Yeah, you have zero leverage once you've moved in with him.
Or the leverage is going to cost you more because then you'll have to move out. You'll have to actually make a movement.
Yeah, exactly. Like you have much more power when you're not currently living together, and he has the desire to gain the benefits of having a woman live with him. Whereas once you're actually living with him, there's a significant loss posed to you as a woman if you want to move out. So yeah, and a lot of women do actually give men ultimatums like this, and a lot of the men like call their bluff and then don't propose, and then you're in a situation where, you know, you either have to like follow through on your ultimatum, which then is considerable cost to you, or, you know, a lot of women will just like wear their clown makeup and will just continue living with a man who hasn't proposed to them and doesn't want to, and when she wants to, and, you know, her needs not being met, right? So
how do you incentivize a guy to keep like dating you, so to speak? The thing I would be worried about too is like if you start to live together, you start to become roommates, and he doesn't feel like he has to try anymore either.
Yeah.
Right? So that's the other thing. You lose that leverage where once you've moved in, if he just stops to being the romantic guy and starts treating you like a roommate, then you're not his wife, you're his girlfriend technically, but...
Again, this is why I've had a lot of situations where I've lived with a guy for less than a year. I've never lived with a guy for more than a year, because usually he gets too comfortable or he stops putting in as much effort, and then I leave. And then he usually gets like, sad, and texts me months or years later crying and begging me to come back. And I'm like, no, you had your chance and you fumbled it. So it is what it is. And here's the thing is a lot of men don't even realize what they've got until it's gone. And so, you know, nothing you can say to him in the moment will realize your value, you know, until you actually leave, and then he loses you. And then he's like, oh shit, I had a really good thing going, and like now I don't have that thing going anymore. So, you know, that's just sort of the tragedy of cohabitation, but it is what it is. So, yeah.
It's almost like you have to let them know the benefits before you get in, because if you don't make that benefit cost them something, then it becomes an entitlement for men. And that's the scary thing about cohabitating.
Yeah, men have to know happy wife, happy life. Okay. So if, you know, I'm the sort of woman where it's like, if he makes an effort to make me happy, his life will be awesome. If he doesn't make me happy, then his life is not going to be as awesome. And so he's very much incentivized to make my life awesome. That's
what a partnership is. Like, you have to be motivated to make that other person happy, and you have to be motivated to work as a team.
Yeah.
And like I said, I think my experience with some of my friends who live with guys is that sometimes they live together, but they're not really a team. They're like roommates. And like I said, live in Mommy McBang Maid, where he's kind of doing his thing, and she's just taking on that, like, all that wifey role and wifey stuff. And he's never made a commitment to her. Some of these guys just flat out live like they're single. Mm-hmm. You know, I don't know, going out to the club. And so I feel like I would be really, really hard pressed to move in the man who didn't have a time frame for a committed, legally committed relationship.
Yeah. So I definitely advise women, only live with a man if you're getting if you're actually benefiting from it. Like, don't sign up to be a Mommy McBang Maid. He has to pull his weight in order for it to be worth it. If he is pulling his weight and he is investing in you and he is making an effort to make you happy, then yeah, it's a wonderful, mutually beneficial thing. But if he's not doing that, then don't.
Right.
Agreed.
It's that simple.
All right. That's our show. Check out our website at thefemaledatingstrategy.com, our newly updated website. So we don't have a ton of content on there yet, but we're working towards getting some more stuff up there. So check that out. Check out our Patreon for weekly bonus content, patreon.com/the female dating strategy. Also can chat with us about this episode on Discord, and check us out on Twitter at femdatstrat. Thanks for listening, queens. And for all you scrotes out there, we're bringing all our shit over, and you got to accommodate it. That's just how it works.
Yeah. If you have to put up with our shit, it is what it is.
Those are the rules. Die mad. See you next week.